Okay, so again, thank you, Don Torino, President of Bergen County Audubon Society, for speaking to us here today, talking a little bit about the beginning to birding. Or, I mean, I told you before, I loved your blog post. Is it me, or is it just, are there more birds this year? Because that's exactly what I was thinking, and that's exactly what I was wondering, and thinking maybe everybody else was wondering. So
Yes.
we'll have Don speak first. Like I said, I muted the crowd, and then afterwards, feel free to unmute yourself if we have some questions and answers. So I'll let Don take it away.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Very exciting. There's nothing more that I love more than introducing people to birds and birding. It's incredible. We like to call it changing their life one feather at a time. And that's kind of what birding does. It's as much about people as it is birds, believe it or not. But let me tell you a little bit about Bergen County Audubon Society first. We are the local chapter of the National Audubon Society, and we're all volunteer organizations, so nobody gets paid for any events that we do, and we love nothing more than looking out and protecting our birds and helping people understand and recognize the great numbers of birds and all wildlife that we have right here around Bergen County. And even though we're called Bergen County Audubon Society, our jurisdiction now goes into most of all Hudson County, Passaic County, and even into Morris County. So our organization is almost 80 years old now. And so we figured it's too late to change the name now. So that's, and if you become a member of National Audubon, you live in those areas, you automatically a member of Bergen County Audubon. So that's appreciate that. So, let's talk about where we are, right? So we live on the Atlantic Flyway, which is the migration route for millions of birds each year. And, they could make fun of New Jersey, or people can make fun of New Jersey all they want, but if you love birds, this is the place that you want to be. We're probably number 4 or 5 as far as the number of bird species that you could see. So you can go to other states like Alaska, and you will see more birds right here in New Jersey. And right in our area, we have incredible habitats, right? So not only do we live on that migration route, that Atlantic Flyway, which is the Route 80, the Route 46, the Garden State Parkway, New Jersey Turnpike of migratory birds, but we have all those different habitats within a small area. Think about it. We have the meadowlands, we have the highlands, we have all the little, the Hackensack River, Hudson River, and we have all those great little nature centers from the meadowlands to Oakland and Mahwah areas and the highlands. And all those different habitats in between mean more and more bird species and more opportunities for you to view a magnificent number of birds. So we're very lucky. We don't have to go far. You don't have to really even have a car to go birding, no matter if there's some place I would bet walkable, no matter where you live, that you could find the birds. So it's really accessible. And what is a birder? That's a question. I remember years back, a reporter sticking a microphone in my face and say, what's a birder? And stuff you really have to think about. Maybe years ago in those old days, those old stuffy days, that birding was looked at as kind of, well, maybe it's a rich person's kind of eccentric kind of thing. But now birding is just for everybody from every walk of life. The president of National Audubon, David Yarnold, likes to say that this isn't your grandmother's Audubon anymore, and she'd be very happy that it's not. And so we're certainly all inclusive. We love having everybody. And one of the things that I find kind of strange is that people are sometimes afraid to come out on a bird walk with us because they don't have any experience. Like, you have to be experienced to enjoy the birds. Of course not. And you can't worry about making a mistake, because if I had $1 for every mistake I made, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. I would own some island somewhere and be off. And I've been out with some really world-class birders. World-class birders, I won't mention their names. Some of them might be on the books that you have. And they have made really funny mistakes on birds. So anybody can make a mistake. Can't be worried about that. The main thing is that you enjoy the birds. And, it's really about what is a birder? It's probably somebody who cares. Now that's what birding is, and that's what it does. It helps you care about where else can we connect to a creature that just days ago might have been in South America or might have been in the Arctic, that'll come down just about to your backyard. So in that way, birding connects us to the whole world, and it really connects us to each other in the end, because that's what it's really all about. So there's about 52 million birders, I think, in the United States. So with a number, believe it or not, the number one hobby next to gardening is bird watching or birding. And I wrote down a really great statistic here. So we're our own stimulus package. We create 863,000 jobs just related to birding. So it's a big part of the economy, which is really interesting when you think about it. But so how do you get started birding? Well, there's all different ways to do it. And there's no right way. There's no way to say, if you do this, then you're automatically a birder. It doesn't really work that way. So I have friends that bird all around the whole world. I have friends that don't go out of their backyard. Other people bird maybe around the county or maybe just the meadowlands, you know? And so any one of those things, it makes you a birder. Some birders keep records. Some keep what they call life lists, keep a list of all the birds that they saw. Some don't care about lists at all. But at this point, you being part of the program today, we probably just want to get past what that little brown bird is, what that LBJ, that little brown job is in your yard, because that's what makes it enjoyable, right? That fascination of seeing something you haven't seen before, or knowing where that bird came from, and that's really the whole enjoyment of this. And so and when we do that, like I say, we connect with each other. But so how do we go about identifying the birds? Well, you're kind of like a detective, right? And there's something called field marks, right? And so you know, I get a funny description when somebody calls me on the phone that I know isn't a birder. You know, they'll try to get me to identify a bird by something that relates to them, obviously, and somehow it always winds up to being a chicken. You know, somehow that bird always ends up looking. I think it looks like a chicken, but that's what they're relating it to. So what we want to do is start putting those clues together and learn how to look. It sounds funny, right? How do we learn how to look? And you know, it's trained. It's like maybe you learned how to play baseball. Maybe you learned how to go bowling. You learn how to throw a ball or catch a ball. Learning how to look is that same kind of way. You automatically, your brain and your eyes will go to looking at something called field marks, right? And field marks, I'll show you the book. See, I get my field guide. This is a Sibley's book, and you could see in those books, right? Little things, little field marks, the difference in species in those books, and they'll be pointing to the head, the wings, the feet, the beaks. All those things are called field marks, and that helps us identify one bird from another. And it can get really tough. There's some bird species that are really look alike, and some bird species, believe it or not, you can't tell apart unless you hear them. So that's a whole nother thing, birding by ear. But so when you start getting those clues together, then you decide, well, okay, I think it's this bird. And then you decide, well, is that bird in my territory this time of year, right? If I look at my field guide and it says that bird I think it is supposed to be in South America this time of year, it's probably not that bird. So again, you're putting those clues together, right? So is it in my area? Is it supposed to be in my area at any time? Maybe it's just a Western bird. And so you come into your best guess of what that bird may be. And that's the fun of it. You could be wrong, but eventually you'll learn. And then there's habits, right? Some birds bob their tail. Some birds climb up a tree. Some have an undulating flight. Again, those are all clues that help you identify one bird from another. And you really learn that by being outside. Nothing substitutes anything for learning how to birding, is that being outside. And going with somebody that knows, or coming out with a group like ours, really helps you learn really fast. I learned from people that were nice enough to go birding with me years ago. And that's what we try to do. We try to pass that on to everybody. And then there's a little equipment that you might need to help you learn those field marks to identify the bird. And do you need binoculars to enjoy the birds? Not necessarily, but they certainly help you advance in the, the word hobby was going to come out of my mouth, but hobby just doesn't do birding justice. It's a passion, it's an obsession at times, it's a lifestyle. Hobby just doesn't do it, but it's something that becomes ingrained in you and becomes part of you, and the love of birds. But let's talk about binoculars for a sec, which can get pretty crazy at times, and I'm not a technical person. And there's some people that just love to talk about binoculars. They'll talk about optics all day, all the ins and outs, the intricacies of them. But we'll get pretty simple on it here. So we can simplify it, keeping things simple in birding. That's what I like to do, right? So years ago, either you had real expensive binoculars that you had to mortgage the house for, or you had real cheap binoculars that every bird ended up to look like a rainbow bunting or something. They have all different colors. It just weren't good. But now the technology is that the good binoculars costs have come way down, and the quality has gone way up, which is just wonderful. And there's many different great companies out there now. These are, but let's talk about the numbers. Let's see, numbers. So let's see. So you see a couple of numbers on there, right? So these are an 8x42, and what does that mean? Well, the first number is the magnification. So I'm going to see things 8 times closer. That's what the first number means. The next number, the 42, 25, whatever that next number is the size of the objective lenses. The lens is right here. So the bigger lens here, the more light it gathers. The more light it gathers, the brighter picture you have at low light conditions, early in the morning towards evening. Think of it like an owl's eyes. Owls have big eyes because they can gather a lot of light to see at night, right? Well, kind of the same thing with binoculars. And then it becomes really the quality of the glass, right? So I can get an 8x42 that's $50. I can get an 8x42 that's thousands of dollars. And you don't have to buy that much, but you do get better as you go up the scales. Probably normally you start at $100, and then you jump to $200, and there's a big improvement. You go to $200 to $500, another big improvement. When you get way up there, 1,000 to 15, 2,000, the improvements get smaller. Noticeable after a while, but not dramatic. So really at that point, you really decide on how much you want to pay for binoculars. But I never heard anybody complain about having a good pair of binoculars. They never said to me, Don, I hate my good pair of binoculars. They do complain if the binoculars aren't too good. So start with the best ones that you can. And that number, again, that magnification, that 8 number, now it might be, you'd say, okay, why don't I get a 10 power? Or why don't I get a 12 power? I even see 15 power, and that would be better. Not necessarily. Because what happens as I increase the magnification, I start to shrink the picture that I see. And if I'm looking for a little warbler 60 feet up in a tree that doesn't stay perched for more than a second, I want a nice big field of view so I could easily define that bird, right? So at 8 is usually what most birders are using. 8x42 is typically, what now, can I get a 50? Then I start adding a lot of weight to it. I would also say try them out. Try to get them in your hand, because what I think is a wonderful pair of binoculars, you may not be able to use. Your eyes or whatever just may not be good for them. So I could certainly recommend stuff, but to get them in your hand and try them out is usually the best way to do it. Also, you want to look for waterproof, fog-proof binoculars. Those are typical now. You don't want it to get wet in the morning and then leak, and then you don't have a pair of binoculars. These, for instance, and many companies have a no-fault lifetime warranty. or I could drop them on the ground, run them over with my car. As long as I could produce the binocular, they're going to fix them or replace them for free. And believe me, all the times I've dropped my binoculars and scopes, I've took full advantage of that many times. So that's, you know, if you have an expensive piece of equipment, it's like having insurance. So may cost you a little more, but you definitely want to have that lifetime warranty on it, I think. So that's the equipment that you would really not absolutely need, but just help you enjoy birding more than just using your eyes. And if you have eyes that aren't that great, older eyes like mine, the binoculars really do help improve your eyesight really well. So, and practice with them. You know, you really got to practice with them in order to use them well. So what you want to do is, when you find a bird that you see, stare at the bird and bring the binoculars up to your eyes, right? Don't look at the bird and then look down at your binoculars, because when you look up, you'll never find a bird again. It'll be somewhere else. So stare at the bird and bring your binoculars up and then learn to follow. And practice, go in the backyard, have the neighbors think you're spying on them, whatever, and just, you know, have some fun and practice with them. So that's, you know, that's having a nice pair of binoculars is a great fun way to start out. After that, as you get into it more and you go to wonderful places like the Meadowlands, I'm a Meadowlands guy. I grew up in the Meadowlands and I still live there, place close to my heart. A spotting scope is good to have, and a spotting scope is, my dog is sleeping on the spotting scope, and I'm going to, sorry, Lula. This is a spotting scope, and it's kind of the same thing, same idea, but the magnification is much more dramatic. As the binoculars were 8 power, these will go to 60 power. And it's like having a telescope. Now, you'll need a tripod for it because you really can't hold them steady without a tripod, so it is a bit of weight carrying around. But the same rules apply, right? The objective lens here, this is an 80 objective lens. And, you know, that's something that comes second though. Go with binoculars first and worry about the spotting scopes later. Practice with binoculars, see how you are, and that'll be something. So those pieces of equipment, other than having things like a hat and good shoes, and this time of year having some sunscreen and bug spray really help too, right? So then you get into field guides. So let's talk a little about books and field guides. Now, I love books, right? I love, if you saw around my house, I have bookshelves, but there are many ways now that you can help identify birds, from everything online to apps. There's some great apps out there to identify birds, and some great books. And what I think is best is to use all of them together as a tool, right? There's not one that's perfect. I can't take, you know, an app's out on the outside and it's raining and it's sunny and I'm trying to look on my phone to what bird that is, but I could open a book. But here's the thing, when you go out birding, don't worry about the field guide or the apps at first. Because the worst thing that could happen is that you're staring at a bird and then you open up your field guide to try to decide what bird it is, and you look up, you know what, that bird is going to be gone. So I advise at first, at least leaving the field guide in your car is a good way. Now, Richard Crossley, who makes the Crossley guides, now he makes huge guides, which are wonderful. Crossley guides are just wonderful books, and the pictures they enhanced are just some of the best for identifying birds. Would I want to carry this in the field? No, I'd get a hernia. And when I said to him, you know, gee, you know, why don't you make a you know, smaller book I can carry? And you know, when his English accent, he said, well, Don, you know, you're not meant to carry that book in the field. They're meant to stay home. And for that reason, that, you know, he said, you can't occupy yourself with books or IDs when you're out in the field. He's got an excellent point. So I like doing, you know, bringing a book out and keeping field notes. So I would say, stare at that bird as long as you can. And when you start learning and practicing how to look, you know, write down, does it have wing bars on it? Maybe you could see the color of its leg. Maybe there's a flight pattern. What was it doing? Was it on the side of a tree? Was it in the ground scraping up the leaves? What, did it have a big beak, a pointy beak? Was it in the mud? Was it high in the trees? And you put all those clues together, right? And you remember those field notes, then go to the field guide and try to decide what it was. I think it just works a lot better. And look, you know, there's great things like eBird is a very important source now. You put your sightings on eBird, which works great. There's, you know, just your online apps where you can keep record of your birds. But you know what? Keeping a journal is just a real nice idea, because you know what? You know, when you pass on to that next big birding world in the sky, nobody's going to want to look online or on apps to see what, you know, dad or granddad or grandma saw on their birding trips. They may look into a nice, you know, journal that you made and write, and as you talk about the experiences you had when you saw those birds. So I think that's a real nice thing to do. And it's a nice thing for you too, is to go back. Now the computer programs have no emotion to them, but books do and journals do. So I think that's a nice thing to do. I wish I would have done it, you know, 20 or 30 years ago, to write down the first time I saw a great horned owl, or what I thought of it would have been lots of fun. So that's something to think about if you're just getting into birding, or you've been birding a long time, something to start to think about doing. So you know, that's some of the things I want to do. And look, you know, there's ethics involved here too, right? And that's a big part of what we do. So, you know, there is right ways to do things, and there are wrong ways to do things. So any bird that's on the nest, you never want to bother, you never want to get too close. So you could take your quick look, or even take your picture and kind of move away. Don't bring attention to it. Don't tell other people about it. It's a good thing. And so we don't want to do any harm. We want to enjoy the birds. We want to see the birds, but we don't want to disturb their natural habitat and what they're doing. If we're bothering too much when they're on a nest, they may not feed the birds. Get too close, they could abandon the nest, and that's something that we don't want to do. So remember, the birds come first, the health of the birds and the habitat come first. You don't be breaking branches off so you could see a bird better, or doing that kind of thing. And you know, going out with a group that helps you learn about what's the proper thing to do. And don't use bird call. You know, we can use that. Apps are wonderful, and we can play that bird sound, but you don't want to do that out in the field, because what you do is you're distracting that bird that should be maybe looking for a mate or trying to feed its birds. You're preoccupying it now by having to think there's another bird in the territory. So you really don't want to do that. And plus, if birders hear that call, that's not a real call, and they follow it, and you're on the other end of it, it may not go so well. You may not be a popular guy out in the field. So there are ethics to learn about what to do and what not to do. And it's all about, you know, protecting the environment and giving something back, right? That's why I'm here. So, you know, if you like nature and the birds, you know, teach a kid, teach your neighbor, teach your son, father, mother, whatever it is, teach them about nature and help them bring it. You know, people often ask me what the greatest threat to the environment is. Is it climate change? Is it habitat loss? Is it pollution? I say it's none of those things. I think the biggest threat we have is a disconnect to nature. So if I can't get you to love nature and love the birds and wildlife that are right outside your door, how can I ever ask you to do something about climate change or about habitat loss or about protecting endangered species? I can't. So we have to, especially here in suburbia, it's tough. It's tough getting people to recognize that wildlife that's out there. But again, you know, if the nature is where you find it, as many people be surprised that we have lots of eagles' nests right around our area. We have things like peregrine falcons and ospreys that made an amazing comeback. So it's just great out there. And once something clicks, and that's what birding is all about, having that bird click, that time that we realize what is really going on out there, and just learning about it and working to protect whatever you can and do your part. So I would take my notes, but I think that's very basically it. So if you have any questions at all, I certainly be glad to answer them for you.
Okay, well, thank you, Don. And I do want to, you've been mentioning that you have started some walks again. So I thought that
Yes.
would be fun to inform people.
Yes, so this coming Sunday morning, we'll be at the Court Park in the Meadowlands at 9 a.m. So everybody, again, our walks and events are always free. Feel free to come out and join us. And we love beginners. We have some real experienced birders, and we have beginners out there for the first time, and we all work with each other and help each other. And the Meadowlands, our New Jersey Meadowlands, is I think, the most amazing place that we have in the whole state, and it's right in our own neighborhood. So come out. If you need directions or anything, you could let me know, but come and join us. And I think the Meadowlands is just a perfect, ideal place to learn about birds, because we have things like snowy egrets and great egrets right out in front of you. Very easy to see. Plus, so many different habitats there. We have everything from warbler species to shorebirds. So Meadowlands is a great place to visit anytime, and it's a fun place to do our walks. So come out and join us.
Okay, so I did want to let everybody know I had muted you. So if you want to at this point mute yourselves, if you have unmute yourself if you have a certain question. There was a question in the chat about bug spray, and if anybody could recommend a good natural one. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know. In your many walks, you may have had quite a your binoculars. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't try to put any unnatural one on my skin, on my clothes. Right. Sometimes, and my friends call me a tick magnet. So if you're with me, you don't have to worry about it, because the ticks are going to jump on me and not you. They love me first. But I don't know about that. There are a lot of ones out there. If anybody knows one that really works well, it's okay. But putting a little off or something on my sleeves or on my shoes and stuff.
Just to catch
that's what I do. Yeah.
And then I did also want to let people know too now, for the Upper Saddle River Library, we do have a few of the field guides in our collection, and we are doing curbside pickup. So if you are an Upper Saddle River card holder, you can reserve the books and can pick it up at our library. If you're in another library in Bergen County, we're not doing the passing of the books as much back and forth, but you can look at what's available in your own library, and if your own library is doing curbside pickup now, again, just to get your first look at these field guides and to see what's out there.
Yeah, and so a good idea. It sounds funny, but you don't think of a field guide as something, as a book you sit down at night and read. But you know what? It's a great thing to go through that field guide and see all these species and familiarize yourself with them. Because you know what? When you're out in the field and you see a bird, you say, "Oh, I saw that bird in the field guide. I don't know what it is, but I know I saw it in the field guide." I've done that many times in the past. So go through the book, and you look at the beautiful pictures of the birds, and you will learn to recognize them and connect the two as you're outside. And look, there's no one perfect field guide, right? So I have many different field guides, and there've been times with a group of us out in the field that were all puzzled by a bird. And one of us will open a Sibley guide, another one will open a Peterson's guide, another will open another guide, and we'll all be comparing guides to try to figure out what it is. And all at times, I'll come home and I'll lay out 3 or 4 field guides, plus I'll be on the computer on Cornell birds or Audubon birds and laying all these things out, because birds don't pose for you perfectly. It would be nice if they did, but they don't. And sometimes you're just seeing a tail, sometimes you're just a glimpse of their wing. But again, you're like a detective putting all those clues together. And so is there one perfect field guide? No, but that's okay. It gives me an excuse to get more books and learn about the birds. And they're all a little different. There's something great about all of them. There are some bad ones out there. There are some ones that aren't so good. But the ones we mentioned here are all very good. And the Peterson's is the old standby. I still use a Peterson's field guide. That goes way back, and some field guides are drawings, some are photographs, some are computer enhanced photographs, which most of them are now, to help you enhance or look for those field marks that you should be looking at. But you'll pick your favorite one out, I'm sure. But use them all. Utilize everything that you can to help you identify the bird. And then when all else fails, then you ask me. And then I'll ask somebody else if I don't know.
Right. Well, there was a question in the chat of a specific, and I know you said the field guides, like you had mentioned Sibley as one of them, and I can write this up when I do it also, and the Peterson guides. But for a true beginner, is one of them a little more at our true beginner level?
I would say Sibley's is more advanced, but I would start looking at the Peterson's guide. I think because Peterson's, although are paintings or drawings, Peterson's has those arrows that'll point to the specific field marks. In other words, it may have 3 similar species together on a page, but then it has the field marks of what makes each one different, the arrows, right? And so that's really important to know what you should be looking for to differentiate those species. When you get into things like sparrow species, and sparrows are probably my favorite species of birds, they can get really, really tough, really tough. And so having that comparison and look what field marks to look for makes it easier. 4 warblers, right? The 4 warblers are very confusing. And we have even books for certain, this is a little warble guide. We have sparrow guides, we have waterfowl guides and raptor guides. So after you get into the general field guides, then you start looking for the field guides for those specific families of birds, which breaks it down even more, which helps a lot. And this is something, I like carrying like a little pack like this. And so the pack will have all my field guides, and I'll also use, especially in the winter when my hands are cold and things like these, right? So this is fold out guides, right? That are really handy. This is raptors, but I have one on warblers and waterfowl, and they're like quickie guides that really come in handy. So carrying a little pack like this with your field guides, maybe you put your insect spray in there, whatever you need is handy to start carrying around with you. And don't forget water this time of year, really. It's hot out there and you don't think about it much, but it's easy to get dehydrated as you're walking around. And so have, your water bottle with you is very important to keep going. Absolutely.
Okay, do we have any other questions? You can unmute yourself if you have a question that Don hasn't covered as of yet.
So anybody could tell me about a bird that they saw, a bird, or they have a question about, or just an interesting sighting. Or if you're interested in birds, what got you interested in birds? I'd like to hear that.
I can do both.
Okay.
I am at a new house. I guess I've been here for a little while and set up some feeders and some nest boxes and things like that. And I have a lot of birds that look like pigeons.
Right.
And I don't think they're pigeons, but just trying to get a sense of what they are.
They're probably mourning doves. I mean, you could have pigeons. I mean, pigeons are feral. Pigeons are wild. They're big though, but they're a little small. They very well could be mourning doves. And mourning dove is a native bird. But you can get them in numbers depending on where you are and what you're feeding. They're just a cool little bird. So on feeders, if they like to feed on the ground, they might be in a platform feeder, on a tray feeder. They love eating, they eat just about anything. But you can, if you didn't want to feed them, fun thing to put out is peanuts in the shell, because they can't eat that. And then you get blue jays, cardinals, chickadees, titmice, and peanuts in the shell is a way to attract them. And then whether it's a pigeon or a mourning dove, they can only eat what they can swallow, and they can't swallow whole peanuts. So that's a fun way to get some different birds in there. Putting out fruit too, like half an apple, half an orange is a great way to get things like catbirds and mockingbirds and orioles to the feeder. So sometimes I think of doing things a little differently will attract a lot more different species of birds. But probably mourning doves is my guess. There are feeders that can exclude any big birds too. Feeders with cages around them will only let birds, say, the size of a chickadee in, or a sparrow, eliminating any big bird. But yeah.
Then my old house is about a half a mile away from where I live now. And this is just something, when I moved into my old house, it's in Harrington Park. Right. You came by actually and mapped out my whole property and suggested boxes and food and what you saw, and it was really great. And I kind of still have that document, and I brought it over here, and set up. I have some thistle feeders,
Yeah, goldfinch, yeah.
and yeah, and even though I'm a half a mile where I was last time, I have not seen one.
You know, they're a state bird, but they are kind of transient. They move from, they're not migratory, but they do move from area to area. And also other times of the year too. So right now, see, all the other birds are almost done nesting. They just start. So they're very late nesters. So they seem to disappear from the backyard this time of year. You know, if you listen for their call, if you learn their call, which is a high kind of pitch, almost like a moaning call, like a whining call, then you'll know that they're in your area. So my guess is they're there somewhere. They're just not coming to the feeders. And most birds have young, they're not feeding them seeds. It's all insects. And so they're there, but they're just not hitting the feeder. You can put the feeder away from a while, put it back out later, because by the time those babies come out, like in August, September, they'll be coming and hitting the feeders even more.
Great, cool, thank you.
Welcome.
And then there was a question in the chat about keeping squirrels away from feeders, which I think,
yeah,
back to what you were saying too about the size of the feeders, maybe be something. I don't know if there's.
Well, there are excellent squirrel-proof feeders. There are really good. There's things that claim to be squirrel-proof, and there are some really good squirrel-proof feeders out there that really work and that have lifetime guarantees on them. They're gonna, they're not cheap, so you might pay, depending on which one, maybe $70 to $100 for them. But you never have to buy another one that have lifetime guarantees, and they really do keep the squirrels out. So there's also safflower seed. Safflower seed is usually the white seed that usually the squirrels don't like to eat. I say usually because there's no guarantee. And cardinals love that seed, one of their favorites. Most birds eat it and most squirrels avoid it. Also, some people don't like getting all the grackles or the blackbird species, and usually those birds don't like the safflower either. So that's, but you'd have to do it 100%. So you could do that also. There's ways of just tweaking things, and so you could kind of attract what you want, Yeah. Feeding is fun. Backyard feeding, bird feeding is fun. Keep the feeders clean, keep the grounds clean, do it in a healthy manner, and it's all good. It's all good.
So I can share. I'm a teacher, so I've been in my house since March, teaching on Zoom.
Oh, yeah.
So I bought just to kind of entertain myself, I bought one of those feeders that goes against my window.
Yeah.
And I've seen so many birds, like
Right.
I've had a cardinal, a mourning dove, a woodpecker. So I've had a lot of sparrows too. I'm looking at my little app here. I just want to show you my picture.
There you go.
And what I love about him is he has 1 foot.
Oh, really? Interesting.
So he comes every morning, and
Yeah.
he has 2 legs, but he has 1 foot.
Wow.
Yeah. So he sits in the seed and he eats. So I'm just bird watching from my couch.
That's great. Window feeders are a great way to start. They are a lot of fun, really. And it doesn't get any better than that, right?
I've seen a lot of birds.
You will. And, our backyards have become so important, especially in this area of the state. We're going to reach the point of build out one day where in New Jersey, probably be the first state to do that, where everything is built on and everything that's preserved is preserved. The only thing left is our backyards. And so if we could better manage our backyards as wildlife habitat and as bird habitat, then we could really help protect a lot of the bird species by landscaping with native plants, providing water, providing nest boxes. We're really going to have to do that if we don't want to keep seeing the decline of wildlife and birds in our area. So backyard is a great place to start birding. Learn the bird calls. That's another thing to practice at. And the backyard is a great way to do that. I know a lot of my bird calls. I have friends that just put me to shame. They're just wonderful. They could tell any slight bird call a mile off, and I see them be right every time. So that's certainly something that's practiced and learned, but backyard is a perfect place to start. And that's usually how most people start. You know, it's usually comes in the backyard, and then you get hooked. Then you venture out to a neighborhood park and see more birds, and pretty soon you're in Costa Rica or something else. So,
Maybe next year.
right, right. Good for you. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Anybody else got a question? Oh boy. Okay.
Okay, well,
I have a quick one. What are the hours at the store? If you wanted to come by and pick up stuff.
I am retired there now.
Oh.
Wild Birds Unlimited, so I no longer work there.
Got it. Okay.
But I still work closely with them. But I think they're open 10 to 4.
Awesome. Thank you.
6 days a week. I'm pretty sure that's their hours now. They just started opening where you could actually go in like last week or the week before. So I'm pretty sure it's 10 to 4 inside.
Cool. Congratulations on your retirement.
Well, yeah, I retired from there, but now I'm working 16 hours a day for Audubon for free. So.
Oh. At least it's
okay.
It sounds enjoyable.
It is. Thank you.
Do you hear me?
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, our house is a lot of glass.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So you know what the problem is. We have
Yes.
birds that hit the house.
Yeah.
Is there a way, without marking the glass so much, that we can prevent this?
Yeah. So what's happening there is the glass windows it has like a mirror effect.
Mhm.
And it looks like the backyard just continues, especially if there's trees adjacent to the window, right? And
Yes.
so it looks like they could just keep flying. And you could imagine, multiply what's happening in your yard around the whole country, then think about the giant office buildings and stuff. The glass office building kills millions of birds each year. So what you could do, now you got to think of it from the outside. Anything from the inside really isn't going to help. So there are nice kind of just sticker decals, just clingers that just cling on that you could put on the outside of the window, stagger them around. You could hang anything outside of that window too. If you wanted to hang like anything that blows around, your wind chime or something, just to kind of let the birds know, even that window feeder is something on the window. People think that it make them hit the window more, but it won't because there's something there. So you have to think of it as just a warning sign in front of that window, other than letting your windows get dirty, but the little clingers, and the clinging ones that you can't see them from inside, they're almost invisible, but the birds could see them from the other side. And just stagger them around the windows really, really helps.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing that up. That's an important issue all over bird strikes. Yeah. Yep. Thank you. Anybody else have a question or an answer?
I have another question.
Okay.
I live also in a wood house, and we have woodpeckers that eat my house a lot. They do a lot of damage. Is there any way you can stop that?
So let's talk about what's going on there. And there's a lot of different reasons why. They're not really trying to eat your house. They may be trying to eat what's inside the wood in your house. But so in the spring, woodpeckers drum, right? And so they don't have a beautiful call, right? Where they call out to each other, a song. What they do is get on anything loud, whether it's your gutter or whatever it is, and they bang, 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 and wake you up in the morning. So that's called drumming. That usually doesn't do any harm to the house. But at times, now, they could be, if you're looking at holes that may be like a dime-sized holes or so, that could be the woodpecker. So what you want to do is check that wood, see if there's any ants or any termites in that wood, have somebody look at it. Sometimes things like carpenter bees will make dime-sized holes, and the woodpeckers will make them bigger to strip it out and get the egg larvae out of that hole. So that you want to seal up too. But other times they could be trying to make a nest, right? So, we don't keep up our dead trees. We cut down the trees that woodpeckers need to make their homes in. And so sometimes the wood along the top of your house. So if the hole is maybe a couple inches in diameter, they could be trying to make a home. In that case, you want to seal that up and put up a box for them to go in. But it helps to determine what they're doing and why they're doing it before you could actually solve it. You know, if you just try to chase them off in general, it's probably not going to work. But a lot of little holes means there's some insects in there, and that's what you want to look at. One big hole means they're trying to make a nest or place their roost for the winter, and you can put up a box. You know, so.
Okay.
But usually it's the carpenter bees start the damage by making the big holes, and then the woodpeckers make them bigger. You know, so. But checking for carpenter ants, that's something that we want. And sometimes there have been instances where woodpeckers, they say, can actually hear, and this is when we had phone lines really, when they could hear the electrical lines, and it sounds like insects inside the wood, and they would start tapping in there to see what was in there. But so once you can figure out why they're doing it, then it's easier to come up with a solution for it.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Anybody else have a particular sighting? So in this area, let me tell you, in this area, wonder where you can go out and view eagles. We have eagles now. Back in, I'd say how things have changed so dramatically. You know, if 20 years ago, or maybe even 15 years ago, if you would have told me there's nesting bald eagles in Bergen County, I would have thought maybe you were drinking something. You know, and then if you would have told me there's nesting peregrine falcons and osprey all over, and you can go out to see these birds regularly, I would have really thought I was living somewhere else, not in New Jersey, and especially not in Bergen County. But the wonderful thing is those birds have made a fabulous comeback because of things like the Endangered Species Act and the Clean Water Act. Those birds have made a fabulous comeback, but we can go out and enjoy them where generations past they could not. Not only my generation, but my father's and his grandfather's, and it probably hasn't been more eagles here than it has been in 200 years. It's really been amazing. Having said that, we're losing smaller birds. We're losing small migratory birds because of habitat loss. So we have a lot of work to still do on preserving habitat and protecting habitat. We've lost 3 billion birds accounts since 1970, and that shouldn't be anybody's surprise. That really comes down to the loss of habitat, and all over, not only here, but everywhere from South America up to Canada. So we have to work together to do a better job to protect those birds and make sure that they're here for future generations. So, and that's what we do, and that's why we all join together. And again, you know, we certainly need everybody. I can't do it myself, and neither can any organization without everybody's help. You know, when you have members are our strength. You know, when I go in to sit down with a politician and have to talk to them about protecting some habitat instead of developing it, they don't, you know, they won't want to listen if I had 10 members, but they do listen when I tell them we have over 2,000 members. So membership is about the power. And so, you know, join a group, get involved. There's a lot of good groups out there besides us. And so do your part and, you know, give a little back, and that's what we do. And that'll really help us and all of us enjoy the birds for generations to come.
Okay, well, Don, I would love to thank you very much. This was I learned a lot, very informative. Again, I'm kind of new, trying to figure it out in this, started looking outside my window, and you really are encouraging me to continue to do that.
Yes, get outside, that's all I gotta say.
I know, I don't have to go far in my neighborhood, as you can tell.
Yeah, yes.
And I will, for everybody that is here, we will be, I will send out a link to the recording of this. And plus, Don has been talking about a couple of things. I will also follow up with a couple of the books and include a few more things in that email. So let's see if we have maybe, okay. All right, and I think then that's, I think we got all the questions in the chat as well. So unless somebody else has a final question, I would like to thank everybody for attending as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
You.
Welcome.
Really appreciate this. This is nice.
Thanks so much, Don.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Hey, what's happening?